Hello and welcome to another Atypical Philosopher video. This is me, Jonathan M.S. Pearce, talking a little bit of philosophy again, and I'm going to talk to you about the idea of perfection, especially as it pertains to the notion of a perfect deity. So we might see in arguments that I use this idea of perfection, and sometimes I assume that the person I'm arguing against, the theist, believes that God is a perfect entity, some perfect being. This is called perfect being theology. So even when I say that, before the universe was created, causally prior to the creation of the universe, God existed in some kind of ontological perfection, I don't believe that because A, I don't believe in God, and B, I don't believe ontological perfection makes any sense, and that's what I'm going to explain. But the theist does, so I often argue from the position of the theist. But this idea that perfection is built into the definition of God is somewhat problematic. So as I said, the argument follows that in creating the world, God would be either lacking something and thus having a need, which is incoherence with ontological perfection, or he was downgrading his perfect state in the process of creating this world. So that's the argument I use against theists, but it assumes that God is some kind of perfect being. Now, that's an argument, as I say, is all good and well, and it certainly assumes the classical understanding of God, the omni-God I often talk about, in being ontologically perfect in every way. However, I'm going to look at that idea and the idea that any such argument for or against God does really not get off the ground, since it's contingent upon the idea of perfection being logically coherent as an intrinsic value and characteristic. Intrinsic meaning in and of itself. You don't need to defer to any other thing. Just there's some kind of intrinsic quality of perfection. So this, I'm afraid, is wrong. And you can't make this assumption because perfection as a standalone conceptual characteristic to ascribe to anything is nonsensical. So I can only understand perfect as a goal-oriented, goal-directed adjective, such that A is perfect for B, or this catapult is perfect for getting this stone over that wall in such and such a manner. Now, one could say that God is perfect at being God, but this implies an infinite regress or circularity. What does it really mean to say God is perfect? Is he perfect at getting a stone over a wall? Perfect at being loving, merciful, just? Perfect at being perfect? Designing? Being moral? Even establishing what a perfect painting is an entirely subjective process depending on personal tastes. And this applies to all sorts of things, such that perfection becomes either subjective or incoherent. Being perfectly powerful and knowledgeable are admittedly simpler proficiencies to hold conceptually. The other problem is that perfection of a being involves multiple aspects, such that, as the classic problem goes, God cannot be perfectly just and perfectly merciful, since to be perfectly just assumes punishingly justly for a misdemeanor, and to be perfectly merciful assumes some kind of leniency, and there is a contradiction in terms there. With all these characteristics that conflict, the theist retreats to maximal perfection, a sort of optimal scenario given all the nuances and variables. But this becomes arbitrary and subjective as well. One more ounce of mercy and one less ounce of justice might be perfect for a God wanting to achieve A, but vice versa might not be better for wanting to achieve B. Therefore, we need to establish without circularity or incoherence what God is to be perfect for, before establishing whether God is or can be perfect. To have a timeless God sitting there and label it as perfect is, to me, meaningless as a standalone descriptor. Therefore, and given the subjective nature of appraisals of perfection, I see any argument using the term perfection as incoherent. Let's use another example. This rugby ball, oval-shaped ball, is perfect for playing rugby. But it's not a perfect ball because it's not perfect for playing cricket, it's not perfect for playing baseball, it's not perfect for playing football. So we talk about things as being extrinsically perfect, as in you value those things in what that object can obtain. It is perfect for doing something. It's not just perfect in and of itself. So that would be intrinsic perfection. It's perfect for something. That's how we talk about everything. So even when we say, oh, that was perfect, whatever that was, whether it's a meal or a film or whatever, that's the perfect film for me in that particular situation to make me feel like this. You know, when I'm looking for a particular film that does this, or a particular meal that does this, that's the perfect meal. You know, if I have a lovely big roast meal with all the trimmings, like a Christmas dinner, oh, that was perfect. Yeah, but if I was sitting on a beach in Tahiti, right, that meal's not going to be perfect. And so these things are contextual, and when we say something's perfect, really it's a lot more nuanced than that, and it's not universal. So when theists say God is perfect, that's a bit of a problem, because actually perfect for what? What does that mean? What are all these characteristics that you think make God perfect? And then are they not, as mentioned, just optimal and not perfect? Because some of these characteristics are much better in certain situations than other situations in which those characteristics might be less appropriate. So there's a lot of argument to be had around this term perfect, and that's what I want to discuss and have done. Anyway, please like, subscribe, and share, and all that. You can join the channel, A Tippling Philosopher. Grab my latest book, 30 Arguments Against the Existence of God, Heaven, Hell, Satan, and Divine Design. That would be absolutely magnificent. Or any of my books. It doesn't really matter. Or all of them. And I've just hit the screen there, so you've just wobbled. I've just wobbled. Anyway, thank you, Toodle Pips. Until we meet again. Laters.